All right, so we're going to play a game here. This is going to be, did this team meet, exceed, or underperform their expectations this offseason? So starting off, we're going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Underperform.
Mm-hmm.
I made a video about this on TikTok, and the situation hasn't changed since then, which kind of tells me everything I need to know about this Bengals front office.
Yeah.
You signed the best receiver duo in football. Congratulations. You overpaid. I don't think it's overpaying to pay Jamar Chase $45 million or T. Higgins 30 or whatever he got.
Which could have got it for cheaper.
But to go both of those guys so late in the game, paying them so much money, that was unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
You could have signed them earlier. You didn't have to tag T. Higgins. You could have gotten him on a 4-year deal instead of a 3, paid him less in the long run because his average for this year, because of the franchise tag, they're paying him more this year than they would have if they just extended him right away.
Totally.
They haven't signed Trey Hendrickson to a long-term extension. They've given him 1-year deals every year because for family reasons, that benefited him. He wasn't sure where he was going to be, where he was going to need to be. He didn't want to commit to one area long-term, but he continued to prove that he is a top 5 edge rusher in the league. He goes 2 straight 17 sack years. Last year, he was the sack leader. How can you not get an extension done for a guy like that? Their first-round pick, Shamar Stewart, still didn't have a contract. They're trying to underpay a rookie, which is rookie pay is so standardized.
Yeah.
It's so affordable. There are rookie reserves
It's inexcusable.
in your cap that allow provisions for guys like that, and he doesn't want to sign it because they're trying to underpay him and cut his guarantees. There is no way. The only reason why the Bengals are still in serious playoff talks to me is just because their division is getting a lot weaker. Other than the Ravens, who there can steal a game from the Bengals?
Mm-hmm.
And last year, the Bengals were 1 score out of those games just because of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. But let's say they go 1-1 with the Ravens, they're going 5-1 in the division still. They don't have to win a whole lot more games to make the playoffs. They were 1 game out last year. So, yeah, they might make the playoffs, but it's just not going to be enough. There's not enough talent on this roster. It's very, very top-heavy.
Yeah, it's such a shame that the Bengals are really going to waste away Joe Burrow's prime and Jamar Chase's prime because this team had such a promising future when they made that Super Bowl, and they've mismanaged it about as poorly as any front office in the history of sports since then. So I agree with you there. Definitely underperform. Their division rival, the Cleveland Browns.
I'm going to say exceed. And here's why. You can't get out of the Deshaun Watson deal yet. If you cut him, you're going to incur a lot more cap problems that you don't want to deal with. You wait another year. But you've got a couple QB options in the building. I don't think Kenny Pickett's going to be one of them come week 1. You have Joe Flacco, who's going to be a good mentor for whatever rookie you like more. Shedeur Sanders is the most accurate passer in college football last year. Dylan Gabriel led the 1 seed Oregon Ducks to no playoff success whatsoever, but still 1 seed. You trade back 3 spots and pick up an extra first next year from a team that's probably going to be really bad again.
It's pretty huge.
You build up the defensive line again, move off of Nick Chubb, but you get your guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are some decent pieces on both sides of the ball here. They're by no means a playoff contender or even a winning record contender to me, but I think they did get better, and I did not really expect them to.
Yeah, I agree with you that they're not going to sniff the playoffs. The West. The AFC is just too loaded. There's probably 10 teams in that conference that are fighting for 9 and 10 wins. It's just too much competition at the top. But with that being said, I think they absolutely exceeded expectations. I didn't love the trade at the time, but like you said, being able to secure a first next year was huge. Mason Graham, didn't love the pick personally. Could have had Ashton Jeanty, could have had Travis Hunter, could have had Abdul Carter. Mismanagement on that part, but if you're able to land a good guy next year in the first, it's passable. But the main thing I really want to touch on with Cleveland and their offseason was Shedeur Sanders. We've had plenty of conversation about how he fell, what was going on in NFL circles leading up to that point, and I don't care that he didn't find a mess up in the playbook or whatever it is that the Giants are trying to push, that he, wasn't good in their interview. I think there's no doubt in my mind Shedeur Sanders will be the best quarterback from this class, even if he sits for a month, even if he sits all year. He'll get his time to shine eventually in Cleveland. I'm sure of it, and there's plenty of talent around him to be successful. Myles Garrett, Mason Graham, you mentioned Quinshon Judkins already. Jerry Jeudy was very promising last year. Loads of talent. I mean, you drafted a tight end as well in the second round. I'm extremely high on Cleveland. Like I said, I don't think they're necessarily going to be a playoff team, but give it another year or two, and I'd love to see where they're at. The one thing that I do think Cleveland needs to do, and I'm surprised they have not done it already, you have to pay Deshaun Watson X amount of dollars no matter what. Get him out of the locker room, get him off the team. You already have 5 guys in the room, not including Deshaun. Get rid of Pickett, that's pretty much a given. We'll see what happens with Gabriel. Weird situation there. Shedeur long-term will be your starter. Flacco's the mentor. Just get Deshaun out of the building. He wasn't good in the past, at least in his tenure in Cleveland. Wasn't good as a Brown. Isn't good now, and won't be your future. So why, yes, you have to cut him a check every month, but move on. Cut ties. It's shocking to me that they haven't done that already, but that's just a personal thing.
For cap purposes, he might be a post-June 1st cut. We'll see in the next few days.
If his deal's fully guaranteed, does that matter? Like, do they not just have to pay him everything?
You have to pay him anyway, but it's just the way the cap is distributed. If it's all this year, then you get penalized. So I don't know the exact breakdown of it, but it could be coming next year. It could be coming June 1st. Who knows?
Gotcha.
In any case, yeah, I mean, you've got to find certainty in the QB room soon. I like the idea of Shedeur splitting reps with Joe Flacco on Team 2 in training camp. That's great. If he's really your future guy, have him with the mentor. Whatever Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel are doing with Team A, I don't understand that. I don't understand why you need 5 quarterbacks to run through camp, but we'll see. I do think they exceeded expectations for this offseason in any case.
Moving on to the NFC here, Washington Commanders. Did they meet expectations?
I think you and I are going to disagree on this. I say no. You had $60 million in cap space. You were like second or third in the league in cap space. You have the best quarterback in the NFC last year, top 5 QB in the league until Jalen Hurts won a Super Bowl, of course.
Right.
Terry McLaurin still doesn't have a deal. This is the last year of his contract, and he's like 27, 28, not young. You trade for an old receiver to be a receiver 2 who hasn't really performed beyond Noah Brown, your receiver 2 last year, in a couple years. You didn't really draft an answer for somebody to sit behind either of those guys for the future. Brian Robinson Jr. is serviceable, but there are a lot of backs that probably would have exceeded his production if you had taken them. Instead, I think they went, O-line round 1?
Right.
Okay, don't hate that. I think they traded for Laramie Tunzel as well from the Texans. Defensively, they didn't make a lot of strides. They re-signed a lot of old vets that just weren't stellar last year. They were just okay, and that's Zach Ertz to me, Bobby Wagner. Whereas you let a guy like Dante Fowler go, you let a guy like Jonathan Allen go, I don't think they really improved a whole lot, and they could have spent more. It's the same way I feel about the Patriots, actually. Look, if you've got QB1, set them up for success. And I think the Patriots did more than the Commanders did. But in both cases, they spent about half of their cap, and they spent a lot of trade capital on old guys.
You bring up a lot of good points there. I'm going to disagree with you. I think that I'm not going to go overboard and say that they exceeded, but I'd say they met expectations. Big Jaden Daniels guy. I think he's a dark horse MVP candidate next year. Deebo Samuel, I'm predicting will have a resurgence in Washington.
All right.
I don't know about like 1,500 all-purpose yards, but I think he'll be serviceable in a similar role to what he had in San Francisco. You make a great point about the cap. and their draft I didn't love either per se, but this is a relatively young team. I would have loved to see them maybe go bring a little more attention to their skill position players and really solidify, a long-term group for Jaden Daniels. But with that being said, I think they're young enough at key spots, specifically with Jaden, and I think that they'll be in contention for a long time to come. As a rookie quarterback, bringing your team to the NFC Championship is just unheard of, so I anticipate so much success next year.
I would agree. I mean, I think success is on the horizon. I think there could be 3 teams in the playoffs from that division. I don't expect them to match their record from last year because the division did get tougher. Their schedule got tougher. They're now, the number 2 seed in the division as opposed to the 3 that they've been for years. And I mean, Jaden Daniels is a very athletic quarterback, and athletic quarterbacks typically hit sophomore slumps. That's what we're expecting for Bo Nix. Jaden Daniels is such a good quarterback in comparison to Bo Nix. But at their core, they play a similar version of the game. And I think that's what it's going to come down to for this team. I think it's all on Jaden Daniels' shoulders. I don't know that he can recreate what he did last year in year 2.
Totally fair. Next up, LA Chargers.
I'm going to say they met expectations. I don't think they did what was expected of them, but I think they performed at the same caliber in terms of the draft and free agency. I love the moves that they made on the offensive line. I liked bringing Mike Williams back. I do, because you found Ladd. He's gonna take a lot of pressure off of the exterior. And if Williams can stay healthy, and if he's not your lead guy, I think he's a very solid X receiver. I don't love that they didn't address receiver in the draft in the early rounds. I don't really understand the Omari and Hampton pick still. Scratching my head with that one. I like Najee Harris. I like either of those moves, but not both of them. And defensively, I think they missed a lot in the draft, whereas you could have had Jahad Campbell. And the Eagles made it clear that they were trading up because they thought he was going to get taken by you. I don't understand why you didn't take him, but I do like moving off of Joey Bosa. Like, there's a lot to love and a lot to hate about this Chargers offseason, and because of that, I put them just right in the middle in terms of where they met expectations.
I agree with your point there, but my analysis is slightly different in the sense that, yes, they met expectations, but expect this Chargers team to be very similar to Harbaugh's Michigan team. 2 backs, hard nose, up front, you're not going to find many teams better. And, Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater, Mekhi Becton, that is elite offensive line play. And, however they end up using those 2 backs, however his role is minimized, whether most people agree with that or not, up for debate, but this team, I think, pretty definitively is going to win 11 to 12 games next year. Very high on the Chargers.
I would agree. I don't think their record will step back from what it was last year. Unlike the Broncos, to me, who made similar moves to the Chargers and kind of just doubled down on what was already their strength. I think the Broncos slide back, and I think that's because of Bo Nix. I think Justin Herbert is just perfectly capable of hitting that 11-win mark. This might help them in the postseason, though. Having those 2 backs, it might make it to where your one guy doesn't burn out on you. And they kind of tried to do it last year with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, who were John Harbaugh's guys in Baltimore the year before. These are much younger, much more explosive, complementary guys. Yes. And Hampton is huge in the pass game, whereas Najee Harris is just a very steady, high average guy on the ground.
Yes.
So I do like the duo. I would have liked to have seen other moves in other skill positions and really just mostly on defense, to be honest.
Fair.
But yeah, I don't hate this Chargers offseason. I think it was a success.
For sure. Moving on here, I got a couple more teams. Let's go Chicago Bears.
I think they exceeded expectations in the sense that you don't expect a team like this to continually win free agency and trades in the offseason. This has been 2 or 3 years in a row now that they've just made killer moves up until the draft. And then in the draft last year, at the time we loved it. Looking back, it's like, man, okay, you had to take Caleb. Was Rome the guy at 9? because there's a lot of talent that fell past 9. And I think Rome has so much potential.
Mm-hmm.
But then you take Luther Burden this year and you're wondering, is Rome ever going to be anything?
Yeah.
Or is DJ Moore getting pushed out? Is Ben Johnson going to work with DJ Moore? Because to me, that's a match made in heaven. He's a possession guy. He's a very high IQ receiver. Who's not fitting in that offense? Because somebody's not. And DeAndre Swift is there. They could sign Nick Chubb and make this a perfect team in my eyes. But if they don't, why didn't they address running back in the draft in the early rounds? And okay, the offensive line is nice, and they've now secured an extension for Joe Thuney, and they have Jonah Jackson for 2 years. I like all that. It doesn't totally click either.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they almost knew exactly what they were doing.
So your answer was underperform?
I think they exceeded.
Okay.
But I'm still kind of scratching my head with this one.
Yeah, I think for all the reasons you just said, I'm going to go underperform. The Ben Johnson signing knocked it out of the park. Probably the best head coach move of the offseason.
Of course. Maybe the best in a few off seasons.
Fair. Totally fair. With that being said, I hated their draft. Made 0 sense to me. Like you said, didn't address the running back. DeAndre Swift wasn't, any better than average last year. And you have Cole Kmet. You drafted tight end round 1, who was projected to be tight end number 2, or even 3 on some people's boards. And in round 2, you take a receiver, which, like you said, why take a receiver in the top 10 last year just to draft another one at the top of the second? It doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, I understand Keenan Allen's old. I understand DJ Moore is getting up there, and he hasn't been as quiet as you'd like your wide receiver 1 to be. But it really left me scratching my head, like you said. Like, it's just, those resources could have been so much better allocated, and I just didn't love it.
Totally agree. I mean, now that the Caleb Williams trade is over, the Bryce Young trade is over, right? And we've seen all the results of it. Yeah, sure. The Bears made out with a huge haul, huge payday, absolutely fleeced the Carolina Panthers. This draft was the one that left the most on the table to me. Whereas in years prior, it's like, man, they really got their worth out of it. Because with their pick, they took Rome. With the Panthers pick, they took the best quarterback prospect, apparently, of the last 5-10 years, whatever. Caleb may or may not turn out to be that, live up to that potential, but still. What they got out of that Panthers trade in the last year or two is worth a lot more than what they got this year to me. I don't understand. I mean, if you're not that confident about this second round pick and you're going to double down and take another receiver, like, just trade out of it.
Right. With our last team, unbiased opinion here, New York Giants.
I'm going to say they exceeded. I'm not a fan of the Jackson Dart pick at all, especially not trading up for him. I think he just would have been there at pick 32. Let's just be honest. You could have traded up to pick 32 or pick 31 and he would have been there. I don't think the Steelers were going to take him. I don't think they fell in love with him the way Brian Dable did. But they signed Paulson Adebo, and they signed Javon Holland.
Yeah, they did.
And they drafted Cam Scatterbo in the 3rd or 4th round, and they drafted Abdul Carter. That defense looks really good at every level.
Yeah, it does.
That offense looks pretty good at most levels. I don't think their quarterback is there, but I mean, Russell Wilson could easily take this team to 9 wins. So I'm going to say they exceeded. I don't think this is the same Giants team that we've seen the last few years. It's still Brian Dable's team. He still likes his quarterback that he really has no business liking, in my opinion.
Does a 9-win Giants team make the NFC East a four teams making the playoffs?
No, just because of the NFC North, there's going to be 2 or 3 teams that are 10-win there too. So a 9-win Giants team to me is just a bad draft pick next year. And it might get Brian Dable out of the building, who knows. But if they have a plan for Jackson Dart, we can't really grade this offseason yet. You just have a hard time scoping how good an offseason was until you see how the franchise quarterback turns out. I just think there's a lot, not just from the Gruden interview, a lot that points to Jackson Dart not being the guy long term.
Yeah, everything outside of the Jackson Dart move by far exceeded expectations. They probably had one of the best off seasons out of any team.
Considering how bad their cap situation was, I was amazed.
For sure. And I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but Jackson Dart is just such a question mark. Like, the pick itself was like, why would you take him there, and why invest in him at all? Honestly, like, we saw the tape. We know he comes from a program that doesn't translate to NFL success. Look at Matt Corral. Look at other guys that Lane Kiffin has had under his belt, and I don't know. It screams Daniel Jones / Zach Wilson to me. And, you know, if you're the Giants, why would you want to get back into business with someone like that? But if everything else hits, they will be just a quarterback away. They'll be extremely competitive on every other level. So,
yeah, I mean, to me, I don't understand the rush to take a quarterback this year. At pick 3, Abu Carter over a quarterback, that's a much safer move. If you're not interested in Shador in round 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 5, that's fine. You brought in Russell Wilson to be a bridge quarterback. That's all he is at this point in his career. I don't understand the rush to take a quarterback unless you're Brian Dable trying to save a job, and I really think that's what that move is.
And speaking of being in a rush to grab a quarterback, the fact that every team had plenty of opportunities, but specifically the Browns and Giants, had the chance to take Travis too, and still go get Shador like late in the draft, and so many teams had the option to keep that pair together, and they were so dominant in college football. You know, maybe they didn't want to influence Coach Brown take over their program, you know, in a year or two. Maybe they didn't want to get into that business, but I just find it really shocking, even 1 month after the draft, that's not a bigger story, that they could have stayed together in the NFL and could have had the same production. But
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I know that's what had you questioning the Browns and the Browns-Jags trade during the draft the most. Is just the fact that they could have taken Shador too, Travis too, and they could have taken Shador in the second round. But I don't think anybody really knew. It just, you know, at a certain point, it's like, well, the Jags have him. The Jags don't want a quarterback for whatever reason.
Right.
There's reasons. With this Giants team, yeah, I mean, it's a great team. It's the second or third best roster in that division, more than likely. The offensive line is still a question, but where is it not a question other than Philly and Detroit, you know? That pick just throws it off kilter. This could be a huge failure.
Right.
A lot of these contracts could burn just because they're committed to the idea of making this kid work.
Right.